Hi, my name is Mark Bernot. I'm a monetary economist. In this video, I want to talk about the results of the 2024 U.S. presidential election on Ukraine. And my claim is that it's a win-win. Whether Harris wins or Trump wins, that is Harris the Democrat and Trump the Republican, it's a win for Ukraine. Let me explain first where we stand with the presidential election currently. 2, what are the possible outcomes? 3, what does economic theory tell us about this? And 4, why it's a win-win for Ukraine. At the end, I'll tell you a little about my views. I want to establish that I'm an American citizen, so I can speak a little bit. I have a voice about this. And I'm an economist, so I have some economic perspective. Now, right now, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan. This is what determines the election. It looks like. We never know. Nevada, Arizona, I have some comments, but it's not as important what's going on in the Rust Belt and on the East Coast. Let's carve Nevada and Arizona out of this equation for now. And we have the swing states of Georgia, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Michigan. In order for there to be a Harris victory, if Dixie goes, except for, let's say, Virginia, if North Carolina and Georgia goes Republican, that means Harris, to seal it with 270, would have to get Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin. That's the only way to do it. Right now, it looks like it's pretty close. It's a coin toss. So the probability of a Harris win based on the polls do not look good. Polymart, which is correct about 73% of the time, is going with Trump. However, Alan Lichtman, who's correct 90% of the time, using the keys in a different method, is going with Harris. So who are we to believe? And let's look at this a little bit more. If North Carolina or Georgia flip and go with Harris, then we have some leeway with Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. Let's call the pivotal state Pennsylvania, because that looks like it almost will determine the election. Maybe a few counties there. I know people complain that we shouldn't have democracy and popular vote. It should be representative electoral college democracy. I disagree. I think one person should equal for one voice, one vote. It was an archaic system coming in the times of kings and queens, and this kind of federal system and poor communication between the election being counted and horse and wagon coming in. That's another conversation. But it looks like a few counties in Pennsylvania have most of the power. Their votes count more than our votes. And that's okay. That's the way the Constitution is written. Because Michigan and Wisconsin, Georgia and North Carolina could give us a surprise. So what happens in Pennsylvania, the good people of Pennsylvania, might determine the fate of the world and Ukraine, or will it? Let's take a look. If Harris wins, Harris is the most direct support for Ukraine. That will probably be a continuation of the current administration with Biden. However, if Trump wins, I'm going to say that could potentially be a win for Ukraine in a more convoluted way. I'm going to revert now to economic theory, and that's the theory of Adam Smith's 1776 Wealth of Nations. If you disagree with this theory, if you disagree with this idea that I'm about to convey, let me know. If you think other economists surpass Smith in determining the wealth of nations, let me know. There are many economic schools out there. The Austrian, the Stockholm School, the Keynesian, neoclassical, dynamic stochastic equilibrium, general equilibrium models, econometric, new money, new ideas. But in my book, take issue with Adam Smith, you'd have to rebut his logic. And the logic is this. When people are treated freely rather than as cattle, they work more efficiently, and we all get rich. And specifically, the policies of Trump are very anti-Adam Smith. It's about protectionism, tariffs, favoritism, specifically like steel and aluminum, if you don't believe me. And this brings down the idea of free trade. Free trade is the most important thing and in Wealth of Nations. Adam Smith uses the example of the pin factory for specialization, and now that increases productivity, wealth, and we all get rich. He uses comparative advantage as a macroeconomic analogous concept to this specialization. That's why, if we didn't have free trade between states in the U.S., Vermont would have to grow oranges and Florida would have to grow apples. Wouldn't work out too well, would it, in terms of efficiency? And you can say, well, the world is more complex than that. If you meditate on Adam Smith and his words, it isn't. It's the same idea. So when you put up trade barriers, like what happened right before the Great Depression, a similar thing will happen. I know it has maybe good intentions, maybe, but it's going to create a lot of, let's say, disrupting a lot of alliances and trade networks which we've established over the last century. It will bring down efficiency and create a global recession, maybe a global depression. Mark me, if the outcome is Trump, there's a very good chance, because of his squashing of the ideas of Adam Smith, he's going against Adam Smith and championing mercantilism. And you see how that worked out for the Spanish or other countries. When he champions this mercantilism over capitalism and free trade, like, for example, Hong Kong, my goodness, the Netherlands, then the world will go through a retraction. And this will push the price of oil down because global demand for oil will continue to decline further. The ruble I've correlated on an econometric regression, the last time I checked, was about 0.91 correlated to the price of oil. When that goes down, the price of oil goes down. When the economies go down, Russia's economy, which is already at the brink, and I will stand with that claim, and they're running out of the stockpiles from the Soviet Union. You can say whatever, it's another conversation. That will result in regime change. I would like to see a great, total revamp of the Russian system to free markets, free economy, free movement of, and maybe even splintering of the country. But right now, I don't have a lot of confidence in the current people that live in the Russian Federation based on the passive attitude that I've seen. So if Trump wins, he will inadvertently trigger this global recession. And you can mark me on this. I don't make claims like that very often. In fact, I've been rebutting claims of global collapse for a long time, and you can check my channel. If Harris wins, we have a problem a little bit because Congress, we have a bicameral system, not a unicameral, and we have two houses, and this can restrict her ability to support Ukraine. But at least there'll be implicit support and, friend sourcing, friend support, and the economies will continue to rise around the world and in the U.S., and that will, again, help Ukraine indirectly because countries will be more willing to bring money over. So we've got two scenarios, a Harris victory, which is the most direct support for Ukraine, and my premise is Russia can't last forever, and even if U.S. support dwindles because of Congress, Ukraine will win because Russia is in a worse condition. Ukraine has access to open markets. If Trump wins, he goes against Adam Smith. Anybody that goes against Adam Smith and treats people like cattle, whether it be North Korea or China, we know what's going to happen there, or Russia, compared to, any free market country, we're going to have a global recession. You may say, oh, but Harris, she has policies that could be interpreted as, connected to socialism. Well, my rebuttal is Sweden, Norway, Iceland, Denmark. Aren't those countries have high social programs and safety nets? And they're extremely wealthy. Have you guys ever been there? I have. I've spent some time there, quite a bit of time, relative statement. And you have a very high quality of life. Well, what they do have is free trade. So Adam Smith was more concerned about free trade. You can say, what about the budget or the trade deficit? Adam Smith never said anything about the trade deficit. He said trade, free trade or non-free trade was binary. It's this or that. It's not about the trade deficit or surplus. Those are mercantilist ideas. Those ideas are of countries run by, dictators who focus on export-oriented and have kind of like an oligarchy controlling the resources, and the people, are economic assets, almost like cattle. They're herded here or there. So you can't tell me that a social net is as important as freedom and free trade, because you'd have to go against countries like economic, strong, beautiful countries like Finland, Denmark, Iceland, Norway, Sweden. And then you're going to compare it to countries that don't. It's the amount of freedom people have to trade and do the things they want freely. And that is why a Harris victory is good economically, despite I don't agree with everything, and a Trump is good because he'll bring the price of oil significantly down. This will stop the Russian economy because they're almost at the break-even point now, and they're also teetering with resources, and it will be the straw that breaks the camel back. He won't want to do that to his buddy and friend, who he's praised, the Tsar of Russia. But it's going to happen because he's never read, and I'm sure of it, he's never meditated and read Adam Smith. Me personally, I'm an independent. My hippie vibe here. I've got conservative family, good values, and a kind of a liberalish viewpoint, especially from a European perspective. So I voted for the person. I don't agree with all her policies. I personally, it would be great to see a woman president, only because it's a statement that we're progressing as a whole, making the world a better place. The EU has a great woman leader right now. But I voted for Harris because that's the most direct support for Ukraine. But if Trump wins, he will inadvertently help Ukraine. It may be a little bit longer time horizon. Either way, it's very exciting. Don't get down about this. This is a message of hope. Let's see how this plays out. Right now, I still will say I'm leaning to, I think it's going to be a Harris victory, but it's almost a coin toss right now. We'll see. I could be wrong on this, but Ukraine is going to win regardless, because Ukraine is an independent country. They are not giving up. Russia cannot afford this any longer. And the U.S. presidential election in 2024 will only help Ukraine either way. My name is Mark Bernot. I'm a monetary economist. Have a great day. Thank you very much.